Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about why you guys should read the Risen Kingdoms trilogy by Curtis Craddock. But before we go ahead and get on into the video, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box for links to my social media, my Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways. The Risen Kingdoms trilogy by Curtis Craddock is an adult high fantasy series with steampunk elements and also a little bit of historical influence. The books in this series include An Alchemy of Masks and Mirrors, A Labyrinth of Scions and Sorcery, and The Last Uncharted Sky. So I'll be completely honest, An Alchemy of Masks and Mirrors, the first book in the series, was a complete cover buy for me. I saw it on Goodreads and I added it obviously to my TBR. I saw that it had an airship on it, and I'm always looking for books that include airships. I guess I have a thing for airships, I don't know. And I ended up just buying it with a gift card that I had gotten. And I read the book and I really, really liked it. And I knew it was probably going to end up being one of my favorite fantasy trilogies. I just found it incredibly unique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of the things that I really like about this trilogy, and hopefully by the end of it, I'll convince you to read it.
In a world of soaring continents and bottomless skies, where a burgeoning new science lifts skyships into cloud-strewn heights and ancient blood-borne sorceries cling to a fading glory, Princess Isabelle de Zephyrs is about to be married to a man she's barely heard of, the second son of a dying king and an empire collapsing into civil war. Born without the sorcery that is her birthright, but with an intellect, Isabelle believes her marriage will stave off disastrous conflict and bring her opportunity and influence. But the last two women betrothed to this prince were murdered, and a sorcerer-assassin is bent on making Isabelle the third. Aided and defended by her royal musketeer, Jean-Claude, Isabelle plunges into a great maze of prophecy, intrigue, and betrayal, where everyone wears masks of glamour and lies. Step by dangerous step, she unravels the lies of her enemies and discovers a truth more perilous than any deception.
So in this trilogy, first off, there are historical influences. So our main characters live in kind of like a French-inspired world. Our main character, Jean-Claude, is a musketeer to the emperor, and then we have a main character named Isabelle, and we kind of see the different countries mimic European countries. So we have a country that mimics Spain. We have some people that kind of are like Vikings, and they actually act like Vikings a little bit in the third book because they don't really have a homeland. They kind of just pirate around. And we also have a little bit of Italian influence. So the author, you can definitely tell, took some historical influences from Europe, from those countries, and wove them into this fantasy setting. The next reason I really liked this trilogy was the mashup of genres. So at its heart, we have a fantasy trilogy. It follows a world where sorcery exists, and there are a class of people that have sorceress abilities, and then there's Clayborns who don't. And it's not like one of those series where you have like the magical people fighting the non-magical people. It's really nothing like that, which is good because I feel like that trope is just way overused in fantasy. So we have established that there are these two different classes of people, but that's not what the plot revolves around. And I absolutely loved the sorceress abilities in this book. I found them incredibly unique. So we have more of an ancient sorcery that I really can't go into or else it'll be spoilery. We have a sorcery that involves blood shadows. So the people have shadows that can kind of come alive and they're crimson like blood and they can kill people and it's wild. And then we have glass walkers where the sorcerers kind of have a doppelganger that can walk through glass and appear anywhere else where there is a looking glass while their other body is left behind, which is just crazy. And then we have shape-shifting type sorcery, and it's not just limited to one thing that you can change into. They can change into multiple things. And then we have another type of sorcery where you can actually be influenced by your ancestors and kind of have your ancestors living inside of your head. And I just found those different sorcerers' abilities really, really interesting. I've never read anything like it. They were so well thought out, so well developed, and just so unique. So, kind of going back to what I said, this is definitely a mashup of genres. So, you have the fantasy element, you have the historical elements that I mentioned, but then you also have some steampunk elements. So, in this world, our characters live on floating continents, nothing is really grounded, and to get continent to continent, they take airships, and the airships are powered by this really interesting, fantastical science that our main character knows a lot about. Then we have these clockwork elements that can actually be put into people or onto people, and these clockwork elements are also magical. So our author is taking the fantasy and then the steampunk and mashing it up, and that's exactly what I was looking for when I first saw this book. I wanted the steampunk elements, I wanted the fantasy, and it definitely delivered. And then we have the mystery and the action adventure part of this series, and you just combine it all together and it's just awesome. Next, we have the character dynamics. So that was one of my favorite aspects of this book. So the main two characters are Jean-Claude and Isabelle, and they have a very, very deep father-daughter relationship. And Jean-Claude is not her biological father, but he acts like it. He thinks of her as his daughter. I just loved having two main characters that weren't involved in a romance. And that father-daughter relationship was extremely prevalent. So it didn't only manifest itself with Isabelle and Jean-Claude. There was other instances between two other characters in the third book that I was not expecting, that we also had that father-daughter thing going on. So I don't know if Curtis Craddock is a father or if he has a daughter, but I feel like just because of that type of relationship that he wrote into this series, that he probably is, and he probably loves his children a ton, because it was really, really evident. And I just loved having that type of character and that type of relationship defined so strongly. It was really, really heartwarming and a little bit different from what you normally see in fantasy. The series also didn't have a ton of romance. I don't want to say it didn't have romance because that wouldn't be true, but the romance wasn't the main part, and the romance kind of fit into the story the way that it should have. And I also really liked how our author introduced romantic interests and then the relationship didn't work out, because I feel like in fantasy you kind of know immediately who the romantic interest is going to be and that it will work out. And Curtis Craddock was like, it's not going to work out. I'm going to introduce these twists and turns with regards to the romance and our main character. And I just love that he did that because it kind of kept me on my toes. The next thing I really enjoyed about this series was the two protagonists. Like I said, we have Jean-Claude, we have Isabelle. Jean-Claude is an older gentleman, and I love how he's constantly reminding himself that he's not as young as he used to be, but that he still is capable to do a lot of things. He can't really rely so much on like his physical prowess anymore, so he has to rely on like his wit and his intelligence. And I just loved having an older protagonist and just kind of the struggles that he went through. And then we have Isabelle. So in this world, women are, I guess, slightly oppressed. They are not expected to do math and science. That's considered more like a man art. And I really liked Isabelle because she was definitely a female that was very talented in maths and sciences. And I don't know if our author was kind of trying to parallel that with our own world, because we're always trying to get women more into math and science industries. But Isabelle was a scientist, she was a mathematician, she had created theories and disproved theories, and that is revealed to us in book one. So she's definitely a very interesting, strong protagonist. And the last thing that I really liked about this book was the author's ability to keep me on the edge of my seat, especially in book one. So I will say the first half of book one was probably a struggle for me because I wasn't really feeling it. I was like, oh, this is going to be like 3 stars. But then the halfway point hit, and that is where our twists and turns happened. And from there, it was just nonstop. And I just loved that the author was able to keep me so engaged, keep me guessing, not know what was going to happen. I didn't know who the villain was, who was involved in what. And he kind of kept that theme throughout the whole series. So we are constantly introduced to different plot lines, different people that you don't really know how they are involved in certain things going on, and it keeps you guessing. So as for the mystery, I guess, part of the plot, seeing exactly who was involved in what way and who you can trust, definitely kept me on the edge of my seat. Lots of twists and turns, and I absolutely loved it. All in all, the Risen Kingdom series definitely surprised me. I absolutely loved the world. It's one of the most interesting worlds I've ever read in a fantasy series. I love the steampunk elements. I love the main characters. I love their relationship. I loved all of the twists and turns. And if you have not yet picked up this series, I highly suggest it. Okay, you guys, let me know in the comments if you have read the series or plan on reading it, or if you have a series that you want to suggest to me that is one of your favorites, and I will see y'all soon in another video. Goodbye.